If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. We're starting on page 125. Then why are you worried about it now? Frank looks up at him again. You raised them somehow, didn't you? You fed them somehow, didn't you? If we start to worrying about money now, man, we're going to be freaked and we're going to lose our children. That white man, baby, and may his balls shrivel and his butthole rot. He want you to be worried about the money. That's his whole game. But if we got to where we are without money, we can get further. I ain't worried about the money. They ain't got no right to it anyhow. They stole it from us. They ain't never met nobody they didn't lie to and steal from. Well, I can steal too. And rob. How you think I raised my daughters? Shoot. But Frank is not Joseph. He stares down again into his drink. What you think is going to happen? What we make happen, says Joseph again, with resolution. That's easy to say, says Frank. Not if you mean it, says Joseph. There is a long silence into which neither man speaks. Even the jukebox is silent. I guess, Frank says finally, I love Fonny more than I love anybody in this world. And it makes me ashamed, man, I swear. Because he was a real sweet, manly little boy. Wasn't scared of nothing, except maybe his mama. He didn't understand his mama. Frank stops. And I don't know what I should have done. I ain't a woman. And there's some things only a woman can do with a child. And I thought she loved him. Like I guess I thought one time she loved me. Frank sips his drink and he tries to smile. I don't know if I was ever any kind of father to him, any kind of real father. And now he's in jail and it ain't his fault and I don't even know how I'm going to get him out. I'm sure one hell of a man. Well, says Joseph, he sure think you are. He loves you and he respects you. Now you got to remember that I might know that much better than you. Tell you something else. Your baby son is a father of my baby daughter's baby. Now how you going to sit here and act like can't nothing be done? We got a child on the way here, man. You want me to beat the crap out of you? He says with ferocity. But after a moment he smiles. I know, he says. Then carefully, I know. But I know some hustles and you know some hustles and these are our children and we got to set them free. Joseph finishes his beer. So let's drink up, man, and go on in. We got a whole lot of crap to deal with in a hurry. Frank finishes his drink and straightens his shoulders. You right, old buddy. Let's make it. The date for Fonny's trial keeps changing. This fact, paradoxically, forces me to realize that Hayward's concern is genuine. I don't think that he very much cared in the beginning. He had never taken a case like Fonny's before, and it was Ernestine, acting partly out of experience but mainly out of instinct, who had bludgeoned him into it. But once into it, the odor of crap rose high, and he had no choice but to keep on stirring it. It became obvious at once, for example, that the degree of his concern for his client, or the fact that he had any genuine concern for his client at all, placed him at odds, at loggerheads, with the keepers of the keys and seals. He had not expected this, and at first it bewildered, then frightened, then angered him. He swiftly understood that he was between the carrot and the stick. He couldn't avoid the stick, but he had to make it clear finally, that he'd be damned if he'd go for that carrot. This had the effect of isolating, indeed, of branding him. And as this increased Fonny's danger, it also increased Hayward's responsibility. It did not help that I distrusted him. Ernestine harangued him. Mama was laconic. And for Joseph, he was just another white boy with a college degree. Although naturally in the beginning, I distrusted him, I am not really what you can call a distrustful person. And anyway, as time wore on, with each of us trying to hide our terror from the other, we began to depend more and more on one another. We had no choice. And I began to see, as time wore on, that for Hayward, the battle increasingly became a private one, involving neither gratitude nor public nor public honor. It was a sordid, a banal case. This rape by a black boy of an ignorant Puerto Rican woman. What was he getting so excited about? And so his colleagues scorned and avoided him. This fact introduced yet other dangers, not least of them the danger of retreating into self-pitying and quixotic. But Fonny was too real a presence, and Hayward too proud a man for that. But the calendars were full. It would take about 1,000 years to try all the people in the American prisons. But the Americans are optimistic and still hope for time. And sympathetic or merely intelligent judges are as rare as snowstorms in the tropics. There was the obscene power and the ferocious enmity of the DA's office. Thus, Hayward walked a chalk line. Maneuvering very hard to bring Fonny before a judge who would really listen to the case. For this, Hayward needed charm, patience, money, and a backbone of tempered steel. He managed to see Daniel, who has been beaten. He cannot arrange for his release because Daniel has been booked on a narcotics charge. Without becoming Daniel's lawyer, he cannot visit him. He suggests this to Daniel, but Daniel is evasive and afraid. Hayward suspects that Daniel has also been drugged, and he does not know if he dares bring Daniel to the witness stand or not. So there we are. Mama begins letting out my clothes, and I go to work wearing jackets and slacks. But it's clear that I'm not going to be able to keep working much longer. I've got to be able to visit Fonny every instant that I can. Joseph is working overtime, double time, and so is Frank. Ernestine has to spend less time with her children because she has taken a job as a part-time private secretary to a very rich and eccentric young actress, whose connections she intends to intimidate and use. Joseph is coldly, systematically stealing from the docks, and Frank is stealing from the garment center, and they sell the hot goods in Harlem or in Brooklyn. They don't tell us this, but we know it. They don't tell us because if things go wrong, we can't be accused of being accomplices. We cannot penetrate their silence. We must not try. Each of these men would gladly go to jail, blow away a pig, or blow up a city to save their progeny from the jaws of this democratic hell. Now Sharon must begin preparing for her Puerto Rican journey, and Hayward briefs her. She is not actually in Sunterce, but a little beyond it, in what might have been called a suburb, but which is now far worse than what we would call a slum. In Puerto Rico, I believe it is called a favela. I have been to Puerto Rico once, and so I will not try to describe a favela. And I am sure when you return that you will not try to describe it either. Hayward looks at her at once distant and intense, and hands her a typewritten sheet of paper. This is the address, but I think that you will understand, almost as soon as you get where you are going, that the word address has almost no meaning. It would be more honest to say, this is the neighborhood. Sharon, wearing her floppy beige beret, looks at it. There's no phone, says Hayward. And anyway, a phone is the very last thing you need. You might as well send up flares, but it isn't hard to find. Just follow your nose. They stare at each other. Now, says Hayward, with his really painful smile, just to make things easier for you, I must tell you that we are not really certain under which name she is living. Her maiden name is Sanchez, but that's a little like looking for a Mrs. Jones or a Mr. Smith. Her married name is Rogers, but I am sure that that appears only on her passport. The name of what we must call her common-law husband. And now he pauses to look down at another sheet of paper, and then at Sharon, and then at me. Is Pietro Tomasino Alvarez. He hands Sharon this piece of paper, and again, Sharon studies it. Anne, says Hayward, like this with you. Take this with you. I hope it will help. She still looks this way. It was snapped last week. And he hands Sharon a photograph, slightly larger than a passport size. I have never seen her. I stand to peer over Sharon's shoulder. She is blonde. But are Puerto Ricans blonde? She is smiling up into the camera, a constipated smile. Yet there is life in the eyes. The eyes and the eyebrows are dark, and the dark shoulders are bare. This from a nightclub? Sharon asks. And yes, Hayward answers. She watching him, he watching her. And does she work there? Sharon asks. No, says Hayward. But Pietro does. I keep studying over my mother's shoulder, the face of my most mortal enemy. Mama turns the photograph over and holds it in her lap. And how old is Pietro? About 22, says Hayward. And just exactly like, as the song puts it, God arose in a windstorm, and he troubled everybody's mind. Silence fell on the office. Mama leans forward, thinking ahead. 22, she says slowly. Yes, says Hayward. I'm afraid that detail may present us with a brand new ball game. What do you want me to do exactly? Sharon asks. Help me, Hayward says. Well, says Sharon after a moment, opening her purse, then opening her wallet, carefully placing the bits of paper in her wallet, closing the wallet, burying the wallet in the depths of her purse, and snapping shut the purse. Then I'll be leaving sometime tomorrow. I'll call, or have somebody call before I go, just so you'll know where I am. And she rises, and Hayward rises, and we walk to the door. Do you have a photograph of Fanny with you? Hayward asks. I do, I say. And I open my bag and find my wallet. I actually have two photographs. One of Fanny and me leaning against the railing of a house on Bank Street. His shirt is open to the belly button. He has one arm around me, and we are both laughing. The other's of Fanny alone, sitting in the house near the record player, somber and peaceful, and it's my favorite photograph of him. Mama takes the photographs, hands them to Hayward, who studies them. Then she takes them back from Hayward. These the only ones you got? She asks me. Yes, I say. She hands me back the photograph of Fanny alone. She puts the one of Fanny and me into her wallet, which again descends into the bottom of her purse. This one ought to get it, she says. After all, it is my daughter, and she ain't been raped. She shakes hands with Hayward. Keep your fingers crossed, son, and let's hope the old lady can bring home the goods. She turns toward the door, but Hayward checks her again. The fact that you are going to Puerto Rico makes me feel better than I have felt for weeks. But I must also tell you that the DA's office is in constant touch with the Hunt family. That is, the mother and the two sisters. And their position appears to be that Fonnie has always been incorrigible and worthless. Hayward pauses and looks steadily at us both. Now, if the state can get 3 respectable black women to depose or to testify that their son and brother has always been a dangerously antisocial creature, this is a very serious blow for us. He pauses again and turns toward the window. As a matter of fact, for Galileo Santini is not a stupid man. It might be vastly more effective if he does not call them as character witnesses, for then they cannot be cross-examined. He need merely convey to the jury that these respectable church-going women are prostrate with shame and grief, and the father can be dismissed as a hard-drinking, good-for-nothing, a dreadful example to his son, especially as he is publicly threatened to blow Santini's head off. He turns from the window to watch us very carefully. I think I will probably call on you, Sharon, and on Mr. Rivers as character witnesses, but you see what we are up against. It's always better, says Sharon, to know than not to know. Hayward claps Sharon gently on the shoulder. So try to bring home the goods. I think to myself, and I will take care of those sisters and that mother. But I don't say anything except, thanks, Hayward, goodbye. And Sharon says, okay, got you, goodbye. And we walk down the hall to the elevator.